The universe didn't defeat them in a loud way. It did it in silence. And that is exactly what makes it unbearable for them to accept. That's the truth they are struggling to swallow right now. They didn't lose because you made noise or tried to prove anything. They lost because your next step was so precise, so quiet, and so absolute that they never even realized the game had already changed. It's strange how people assume they are ahead just because everything feels still, not knowing that stillness is often the sign of everything shifting. They mistook your calm for fragility, your silence for hesitation, and your patience for surrender. They never understood that those quiet, unnoticed moments were actually the foundation of a checkmate being built in your favor. It's like someone mocking a seed for being small, forgetting that every towering tree once existed in near invisibility. That was your process. You weren't falling behind. You were building up. While they were busy trying to define your value through limited perception, something far bigger was aligning in your favor, something they could not interrupt, no matter how hard they tried. The truth is simple. When a move is aligned, no opposition can cancel its outcome. They can talk, they can spread noise, they can act like they never saw it coming, but the result doesn't change. Checkmate, final, irreversible, unshakable. And for those still listening, understand this message is meant to travel further than just you. Supporting and engaging with this kind of message helps it reach the people who need to hear it most. It strengthens the signal, spreading the reminder where it matters. You're part of something larger now, something you may not fully see yet. Your presence here matters more than it seems. And coming back to the core truth, the checkmate is already set. There is no recovery from it. What makes it even more powerful is that it was never loud. It was never forced. Your victory came from the steps you took when no one was paying attention. You stayed grounded in yourself while they stayed focused on your downfall. They thought you were out of the game, but the universe was simply moving you in ways they couldn't see. That's the thing about real strategy. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just arrives. Chosen one, you didn't win because you were the loudest. You won because you were aligned. While others wasted time chasing attention and quick wins, you kept growing in ways they had no access to. You were building a foundation while they were collecting moments. You were playing the long game while they were stuck in short-term comfort. That's why your checkmate hit so hard. They thought they knew your next move, but you weren't even on the same level of thinking anymore. You had already stepped out of the game they were trying to play with you. People like them don't understand quiet power. They only respect noise. So when your silence didn't match their expectations, they assumed you were done. They didn't know silence is where the universe whispers the next move. They didn't know your stillness was a sign of growth, not defeat. And now they have to live with the truth that your quiet became their downfall. That's why they're shaken right now. Not because you're loud, but because you didn't need to be. Here's the part that stings them the most. They didn't just lose to you. They lost to the momentum behind you. They lost to your patience, your self-control, your consistency, and your alignment. You were moving with something bigger than pride or ego. You were moving with direction. They were moving with insecurity. And insecure people always try to slow down what they secretly fear. They poked at you, studied you, judged you, tried to box you in because deep down they sensed your path was not something they could block. And they were right. They never stood a chance. When someone tries to stop alignment, all they do is delay their own peace. They never change the outcome. They can try to twist stories, turn people against you, or pretend you don't matter. But the universe doesn't bend for their insecurities. It bends for truth. and your truth was always stronger than their panic. Chosen one, stop doubting your impact. You're not here by mistake. Your journey was never random. Those quiet days where you felt invisible, that was the universe setting the board. Those moments where nothing made sense, that was strategy loading in the background. You weren't being ignored, you were being positioned. Everything you survived became part of the move that sealed this checkmate. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was accidental. Your life is proof that steady power is the strongest kind. Real strength doesn't flash, it grows. Real confidence doesn't scream, it stands. Real light doesn't beg for attention, it forces people to adjust to its brightness. You became that light without even realizing it. And that's why the enemy is scrambling now. They once brushed you off thinking they didn't need to worry about you. Now your presence alone shifts the room. You don't even need revenge. Your success already took care of that. You've become the reminder they can't escape the outcome. They can't rewrite the truth. They can't hide from. You walk forward, and their past moves shake behind you. You exist, and their illusions fall apart. You think that's an accident? No. That's what happens when alignment wins, and Chosen One thanks for staying locked in. Before we go any deeper into this checkmate you just delivered, take a second to breathe, because what's coming next is the part most people never get to hear. If you're really tuned into this shift, drop the number 777 in the comments, so we know who's awake and who's still catching up. And if you want to support the team behind this message, feel free to hit the super thanks. These messages take real time, real effort, and your support keeps them alive. It doesn't matter if it's a penny or a fortune. The energy behind your gesture is what fuels this mission forward. And now, Chosen One, let's move into this step by step. If you're truly someone who secured a checkmate that can never be undone, you'll feel the natural pull to stay until the very last word. This is where everything clicks. Let's get into it. Number 1. When the smoke clears, the last one standing is the one they should have never provoked. They thought they crippled you, but all they did was wake up someone they were never built to face. That's the line echoing in their mind right now. And trust me, it hits them like a punch to the throat every time they replay it. They spent so long mocking your silence, laughing at your pause, celebrating what they thought was your downfall. And now they're standing in the ruins of their own assumptions, trying to figure out how the person they underestimated just wiped the entire board clean with one move. That's the thing about people who underestimate you. They always forget that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means calculating. It means observing. It means waiting for the exact second the universe leans in your favor, and then striking with the kind of precision that rewrites the whole game. They danced on your quiet like it was your grave, not realizing it was your training ground. They confused your stillness with surrender, because their minds can only process loud power. They don't understand silent strength. They don't understand the kind of person who doesn't need an audience to evolve. While they were busy chasing attention, you were sharpening in the dark. While they were bragging about small wins, you were aligning with something bigger. They thought your silence meant you were finished, but it was the sound of you leveling up. Here's the part they'll never admit. They felt the shift before you even moved. They felt the energy change. They felt the pressure building. They felt the universe turning its head toward you. And it scared them. They didn't want to believe it, so they joked about you, dismissed you, tried to talk over your growth. But inside, they were already nervous, already sensing they poked the wrong soul. They kept telling themselves you were harmless, while every part of their intuition screamed that they were about to get outplayed by someone they underestimated. Chosen One, you stepped into a position they can't even comprehend. You blinked, and the whole landscape changed. One moment they thought they were ahead, and the next, checkmate, clean, quiet, final. You didn't win because you were louder or more dramatic. You won because your moves were anchored in alignment. Real power doesn't need noise. It doesn't need a crowd. It doesn't need approval. It grows where no one is looking and strikes when no one is ready. People who lack depth chase noise. People who lack purpose chase crowds. And those same people love to laugh at what they don't understand. They saw you withdrawing and assumed you were falling apart. They saw you stepping back and thought you were losing. But you weren't collapsing. You were charging. You were gathering energy. You were letting old layers fall off so you could walk back into the world untouchable. They, on the other hand, were busy playing dirty. They tried twisting narratives, pulling strings, creating fake stories, hiding envy behind fake concern. They moved like people who believed they owned the board. But every game has a limit. Every illusion has an expiration date. And their biggest mistake wasn't the scheming they did. It was choosing to scheme against someone the universe was actively guiding. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting alignment itself. And that never ends well for the one going against the current. You might be wondering, if I've already won, why does everything feel so calm? Because this is the silence that happens after the final blow. This is the quiet of aftermath, where everything is already decided. The battlefield isn't loud anymore because the energy shifted in your favor and stayed there. The enemy isn't shouting because they don't know what to say. They didn't expect this ending. They didn't expect you to rise without warning. They didn't expect the universe to collect every quiet step you took and turn it into a move that destroys every illusion they built. You didn't waste time. You invested it. Every delay sharpened you. Every rejection repositioned you. Every slow season strengthened your foundation. You weren't being ignored. You were being protected. You weren't being delayed. You were being upgraded. Doors didn't stay closed because you were unworthy. They stayed closed because your spirit didn't fit small spaces anymore. Stillness is strategy. They mocked it because they don't understand strategy. They only understand shortcuts and noise. But you understand timing. You understand momentum. You understand that when the universe backs a move, no enemy gets to alter the outcome. That's why you don't owe them explanations. You don't need to clear anything up or defend who you've become. Your silence is doing the explaining for you. Your energy is doing the talking. Your glow is doing the storytelling. Let them sit in confusion. Let them replay everything they said about you. Let their own words be the echo that haunts them. And here's the part they'll never be able to erase. They treated you like a pawn, the smallest piece on the board. But pawns have one secret no one respects until it's too late. Once a pawn crosses the board, it transforms into anything it chooses. And you cross that board, line by line, step by step, quietly, patiently. And then suddenly, you weren't a pawn anymore. You became the piece that ends the entire game. You didn't just survive what they did, you evolved because of it. You didn't just heal, you sharpened. You didn't just return, you upgraded. And now you're standing in a place they can't reach, watching them try to understand how the person they mocked just became the person they can't defeat. You're not the one who should be worried they are, because once the smoke clears, the one still standing is always the one they should have never messed with. And chosen one, that one is you. Number 2, they read your quiet wrong and paid the price for it. They thought you stopped moving, but you were only lowering your stance. and that's the last thing an enemy ever wants to misread. A silent warrior isn't weak. A silent warrior is loading. They weren't witnessing your surrender. They were witnessing your evolution. The still ones are always the most dangerous because they strike without warning. That's the reality they're choking on now. They mistook your stillness for surrender because small minds always misinterpret what they don't understand. They thought your quiet meant confusion. They thought your pause meant panic. They thought your lack of reactions meant you were done. But chosen one, you weren't stuck. You were syncing with the universe. You were watching the board shift while they were too busy celebrating a victory they never secured. They assumed your silence meant defeat, not realizing silence is where every real checkmate is born. Imagine this. Someone watching a chessboard while the opponent stops moving for a moment. They lean back thinking the game is frozen. They don't notice the subtle shift in the opponent's eyes. They don't see the calculation happening behind the calm. And then, without warning, one move ends the entire match. That's exactly what you did. They were watching your stillness like it was a pause. Meanwhile, your strategy was already in motion. They thought you were hesitating. They thought you didn't know what to do next. But only fools confuse patience with paralysis. You weren't frozen. You were focused. You weren't scared. You were scanning. You weren't defeated. You were refining. The world teaches loud reactions, but the universe teaches quiet mastery. And you chose mastery. Stillness is where your sharpest instincts woke up. You weren't wasting time. You were sharpening the blade. You were becoming impossible to predict. They expected noise, drama, begging, breakdowns, but you gave them silence. And silence is the one thing an enemy never knows how to analyze. It haunts them. It confuses them. It keeps them guessing until their own fear becomes their downfall. Imagine this too, a lion crouched in tall grass. To someone who knows nothing about danger, the lion looks inactive. It looks slow. It looks uninterested. But anyone with sense knows that the crouch is the most terrifying part. The crouch means the lion has already picked its target, already measured the distance, already chosen the outcome. The pounce is just the final step. They saw your crouch and called it collapse. They didn't know they were seconds away from impact. You didn't lose momentum. You refined it. You took every ounce of energy you had and turned it inward, not outward. You focused. You aligned. You prepared. And now the outcome is irreversible. Your stillness wasn't a pause. It was a setup. Every quiet day was a piece falling into place. Every moment of silence was a new strategy forming. Patience isn't passive, it's predatory. It's the calm before the quake. It's the breath before the strike. And, chosen one, you mastered that. You listened when others shouted. You observed when others panicked. You slowed down when they sped up. They tried to rush the universe, but you learned to move with it. You trusted timing over emotion, alignment over ego. That's what shifted the entire game in your favor. You didn't force anything. You let everything come to you. Now the energy has flipped because you stayed still when they were scrambling. You didn't chase anyone or anything. You didn't try to fix what wasn't yours to fix. You didn't beg. You didn't break. You didn't react. And that silence messed with their minds more than any argument ever could. They were expecting chaos from you. Instead, they received clarity. They were expecting noise. Instead, they got precision. That's why they're uneasy now. They're replaying every quiet moment, trying to decode it, trying to figure out when they lost control. Imagine this. A bow pulled backward. From the outside, it looks like a setback. It looks like the arrow is moving in the wrong direction. But anyone who understands physics knows the backward pull is what creates the forward force. You were that arrow. They saw you being pulled back and assumed you were failing, but you were loading, you were building pressure, you were storing impact, and now the release has already happened. You might even be asking yourself right now, why did everything stay so quiet while I was leveling up? Because real growth never announces itself. Real evolution doesn't ask for attention. The universe doesn't reveal its construction while it's still being built. It moves in silence, then exposes the outcome all at once. That's exactly what happened with you. What looked like emptiness was actually progress unfolding behind the scenes. Stillness is not absence of power, it's controlled strength. Not the performative patience people claim to have, but real patience. The kind that understands timing, respects distance, and refuses to move from emotional pressure. The kind that doesn't rush just to feel validated. The kind that doesn't react just to prove existence. The kind that waits because it already knows the right moment will come without force. You stepped into that state without even realizing it. And that's what changed everything. You didn't collapse under pressure. You observed and adjusted. You didn't run away. You recalibrated. You didn't lose direction. You aligned with it. In that process, you stopped being a reaction and became a presence. And that's why they feel it even when nothing is being said. They are not responding to what you do. They are reacting to what you've become. The shift in your energy hits deeper than any argument ever could. Your silence carried more impact than confrontation ever would. Respect that silence. It wasn't emptiness, it was strategy. You no longer operate from reaction or chaos. You move differently now, with awareness instead of impulse, with timing instead of urgency. You act when it's aligned, not when it's provoked. You don't chase outcomes anymore. You allow them to come toward you. And what comes now is shaped by clarity, not fear. Picture this, a volcano before eruption. From the outside, nothing seems to be happening. No fire, no collapse, no warning signs. But inside, everything is building. Pressure, heat, inevitability. The entire structure is preparing for a moment that will reshape everything around it. That was you. Calm on the surface, but undeniable power underneath. And when the shift finally came, the environment had no choice but to adjust to it. At that point, the outcome was already decided. The checkmate had already occurred. What carried it there was your patience, the quiet force they never accounted for. They didn't fall because you were loud. They fell because you were aligned. They weren't broken by noise. They were undone by silence they misread. They thought your stillness meant surrender. They thought the game was paused, but you were already winning, quietly, strategically, permanently. Number 3, they mocked your slowness, not realizing you were being aimed to destroy. They thought you stalled, but you were becoming the trajectory that would rip through everything they built against you. That's the part eating them alive. Now they called it delay, setback, failure, confusion. They told themselves you were falling behind, when in reality you were being shaped into something too precise for their level. They forgot that the most dangerous thing in the world is not the loud warrior swinging wildly. It's the quiet weapon being prepared in the shadows. And chosen one, you were that weapon. Imagine this, a bullet sitting still inside the chamber. To someone clueless, it looks useless, weak, motionless. But anyone who understands power knows stillness is the final moment before impact. You weren't being slowed down. You were being aligned. Every rejection was the universe adjusting your aim. Every setback was tightening your trajectory. Every no was trimming unnecessary paths so your shot would land with absolute accuracy. You might even wonder, why did it take so long? Why did everything feel paused? Because precision takes time. A rushed shot misses. A calibrated shot destroys. The universe wasn't delaying you. It was perfecting you. Every heartbreak reshaped your focus. Every closed door refined your direction. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. You weren't denied. You were engineered. Imagine a sniper lining up a shot. They don't fire instantly. They breathe. They calculate. They adjust for wind, distance, angle. They wait for the exact second everything aligns. That was your life these last seasons. While your enemies mocked your pace, you were becoming unstoppable. They thought you were behind schedule, not realizing you were on cosmic timing. And here's the hard truth for them. They celebrated early because they didn't know your silence was aim, not defeat. Now your energy is colliding with the right path, the right people, the right moments. And everything is shifting fast. They'll call it luck. They'll call it overnight success. But you'll know the truth. It was sniper accuracy. It was years of pressure turning into one clean strike they can't block or undo. You were never late. You were right on time. And now you're released, loaded, precise, unavoidable. Number 4. You aimed small, but the universe was secretly crowning you. They thought you were asking for scraps, not realizing you were being groomed for a throne they never saw coming. That's what stings them now. You asked for inches because you were just trying to breathe, just trying to stabilize, just trying to get through the chaos. But the universe wasn't interested in giving you crumbs. It was too busy expanding you. It was turning your survival mode into sovereignty. They saw you as someone begging for a break, but behind the scenes, you were becoming someone who would own the whole board. Imagine this, a seed buried underground. To the outside world it looks dead, forgotten, useless. But beneath the surface, it's cracking open, expanding, rearranging itself into something that will one day tower over everything that once overshadowed it. That was you. You weren't buried. You were planted. The pressure they thought would crush you only activated your growth. And I know the thought has crossed your mind. Why did things feel so heavy? Why did everything break all at once? Because the universe wasn't giving you peace. It was giving you power. Peace would have kept you small. Power forces expansion. Your storms weren't punishments. They were construction zones. Every loss cleared out weak foundations. Every silence stripped away distractions. You weren't being abandoned. You were being aligned. Imagine an arrow being pulled back. To someone watching, it looks like it's moving the wrong direction. But that backward pull is what creates unstoppable force. That was your setback. They laughed at you while you were being pulled back, not realizing the release would launch you past everything they built against you. They mocked your quiet, not knowing quiet is where empires form. The universe didn't want you to rebuild the old version of yourself. It wanted you to outgrow it entirely. That's why the tension felt unbearable. That's why everything familiar fell apart. You evolved too big for the life you used to fit into. You're not waiting for light anymore. You became the light. And now the universe is removing anything, anyone, and any version of you that can't handle the shine you're stepping into. Number 5. The earth stayed still, but you just rewrote the rule book. They didn't hear a boom, but they felt the impact. Quiet revolutions always hurt the loudest egos. That's what has them pacing now. They were waiting for some dramatic explosion to signal your rise, some obvious moment they could point to and say, "That's when it happened." But your power didn't arrive with noise. It arrived with gravity. It dropped into your life like a silent meteor and shifted everything without asking for permission. The ground didn't shake, but every piece on the board moved the moment you anchored yourself. They thought nothing had changed because you weren't performing, but real power doesn't perform. Real power doesn't shout for attention. Real power settles into its place, and the whole world rearranges around it. You didn't get louder, you got rooted. You stopped bending to fit rooms, and suddenly the same people who ignored you can't stop watching your every move. That's the thing about alignment. It doesn't need an audience, but it creates one. Imagine walking into a room expecting the same layout, only to find the furniture rearranged, the air different, the energy shifted, and you can't explain why. That's what they're feeling around you right now. Confusion, tension, curiosity. They sense something has changed, even if they can't name it. You didn't shake the ground, you shook their certainty. Maybe you've even wondered, why are people treating me differently all of a sudden? Because your presence finally caught up with your potential. You're not reaching anymore, you're radiating. You're not defending yourself, you are the defense. Respect stopped being something you chased, it's something your energy demands now. You became the fortress without even trying. You stopped playing the game, and the game had no choice but to restructure around you. That's why nothing feels the same. You're not a piece on the board anymore. You are the board. You set the tone, the pace, the boundaries. People don't move you, you move them. The shift didn't happen someday. It already happened, quietly, completely, and permanently. And chosen one, they're just now realizing the entire game reset the moment you stepped into your true weight. Number 6. You stopped chasing them. Now they can't escape your pull. You're not stretching toward anyone anymore. You became the force everything bends toward. That's the shift they can't ignore. You're not reaching, begging, or trying to prove yourself to people who were never meant to hold your energy in the first place. You stopped running toward doors, and suddenly every door is trying to open for you. That isn't luck. That isn't coincidence. That's what happens when alignment becomes your natural frequency. Force stops mattering because resonance takes over. Imagine this. A star doesn't chase planets. It just burns bright enough that the entire system forms around it. That's you now. You tuned your energies so clean, so stable, so intentional, that everything meant for you gravitates toward you without effort. That's magnetism. Real magnetism isn't loud. It doesn't grab. It doesn't hunt. It just is. And because it exists, everything else reorganizes itself around its presence. You might even be asking, why are some people suddenly drawn to me while others seem uncomfortable? Because you've become two things at once, a mirror and a medicine. To people who live in truth, your presence feels like clarity. It calms them. It steadies them. To people who hide behind lies, your presence feels like exposure. It rattles them. It forces them to face themselves. You no longer fit their expectations, and that makes them uneasy. The ones who belong feel healed around you. The ones who don't feel revealed. That's the power of radiance. You're not the seeker anymore. You're the signal. You don't go looking for opportunities, people, or alignment. You broadcast, and what matches your frequency shows up without delay. Imagine a lighthouse. It doesn't chase lost ships. It stands firm, shining, and lets the lost reveal themselves. Its very existence brings order to chaos. That's what your energy is doing now, clearing out what isn't meant, calling in what is, and doing it without force. You're not reaching anymore, chosen one. You became the gravity, you became the pull, you became the reason the whole room shifts when you walk in. And now the universe responds to you, not the other way around. Number 7. You stopped chasing victory. You became the receipt. They didn't want to believe alignment works until you walked in as the evidence they can't escape. That's the part breaking their pride right now. You didn't just win a round. You became the living, breathing receipt. That patience, discipline, and silent growth still beat ego-driven shortcuts. They can roll their eyes, pretend they don't see it, pretend your rise is luck. But deep down they know your existence ruins the excuses they hide behind. You didn't come back louder. You came back undeniable. Imagine a mountain arguing with the wind. Impossible, right? The mountain doesn't explain why it stands. It doesn't justify its height. It doesn't clap back at storms. It just exists, unmoving, unbothered, proving its worth by presence alone. That's who you've become. You don't shout. You don't convince. You don't beg anyone to understand your path. You stand, and standing is enough. You might even wonder, why do people look at me differently now? Because you became the outcome they never expected. Your life exposed their shortcuts. Your growth exposed their laziness. Your resilience exposed their excuses. You aren't trying to inspire anyone, yet you are. You aren't trying to teach anyone, yet your existence is a lesson. You're not chasing validation, you're radiating proof. You didn't ask for the spotlight. Your evolution dragged it toward you. Your story shows that staying aligned isn't naive, it's strategic. It shows that silence isn't weakness, it's formation. It shows that integrity isn't outdated, it's lethal. Every piece of your journey became a message, and every person watching you is now forced to face the truth. You didn't get here through noise, you got here through alignment. Imagine the ocean trying to justify its pull. It doesn't. It just moves, and everything else adjusts. That's you now. You became the pull, the shift, the influence. You became the reassurance for the ones who are still fighting quietly. You became the fear for the ones who tried to break you. You're not striving anymore, chosen one. You're demonstrating. You're not proving a point. You are the point. The mission isn't something you speak about. The mission is something you became. Number 8. You proved the chaos was a blueprint. They were too small to read. They called your journey random because their minds weren't built to recognize design. That's what burns them now. They thought your life was a series of unlucky breaks, messy chapters, and senseless hits. They shook their heads, judged your storms, whispered about your losses, all while believing you were spiraling out of control. But every moment they mocked was actually part of a pattern, a sequence, a blueprint. What they called chaos was choreography. What they dismissed as coincidence was strategy. You didn't stumble into alignment. You were moved into it. Imagine this. A puzzle dumped on the floor. At first it looks like a disaster. Nothing connects, nothing matches. But the moment the right hands begin placing each piece, everything starts to make sense. That was your life. The betrayals, the silence, the heartbreak. None of it was a waste. The universe was turning scattered fragments into a picture only you were meant to carry. You might even ask, why did everything feel so unfair? Why did all the wrong people enter my life? Because every push, every betrayal, every break was redirecting you. Pain wasn't punishment, it was positioning. The mess wasn't working against you. It was shaping the version of you that now stands unshaken. You didn't wander into meaning. You were guided with surgical precision. You're not wondering if you belong anymore. You became the center. Everything else now rotates around. You're no longer questioning your place in the world. You are the axis of your reality. You don't chase order, you radiate it. You don't look for meaning, your life is the meaning. The breakdowns weren't failures, they were setups. Setups for clarity, setups for alignment, setups for the checkmate moment you're living now. Imagine a storm ripping through a forest. To the untrained eye, it looks destructive. But storms clear dead branches, turn over soil, and make space for stronger growth. That was your chaos, clearing, resetting, preparing. You were never falling apart. You were being rebuilt. You stand now as the living proof that nothing was random, nothing was pointless, nothing was wasted. Every scar became instruction, every heartbreak became fuel, every silence became a turning point. And now, chosen one, nothing and no one can undo the design you embody. The blueprint is complete. The outcome is sealed. The checkmate is written. Number 9. You didn't just win, you became the centerpiece. They all rotate around. They wanted you to fight for a seat, not realizing you were becoming the architecture of the entire room. That's the part that hits them in the throat. Now they thought you were competing. They thought you were hustling for scraps. They thought you were desperate for validation, approval, placement. Meanwhile, you weren't trying to climb their tiny ladder. You were outgrowing the entire structure. You didn't just win the match, you inherited the whole board. The game didn't crown you, your evolution did. Imagine someone polishing a cheap plastic crown while the real gold one is forming underground. That's them. And the real crown, that was you being forged through pressure, setbacks, silence, and fire. You didn't chase royalty, you didn't beg for recognition, you didn't demand a spotlight. You became the crown itself, shaped by resilience instead of noise, molded by alignment instead of ego. And yes, the thought might cross your mind. Why didn't anyone see this coming? Why didn't they treat me like the person I was becoming? Because thrones aren't handed to the loudest, they're revealed to the most aligned. You didn't rise because people chose you. You rose because the universe rearranged the pieces until your position was undeniable. They were watching the board. You were becoming the board. You stopped asking for a seat. And suddenly, the entire table fell under your command. You're not applying to be a leader. You are the leader now. Not through force or performance, but through presence, through weight, through the kind of energy that resets dynamics the second you enter a room. They feel it. They adjust around it. They react to it without meaning to. Imagine a game where one piece suddenly becomes the axis everything else orbits. That's you. You didn't steal the board. You evolved into the only piece that matters. The rest of the game now shifts because of you, not despite you. The throne wasn't gifted. It wasn't negotiated. It was grown into, earned silently, and revealed naturally. Chosen one, the game is done. The board is yours. The shift already happened. Now move like the one who owns every square. Number 10. They fed on your confusion. Now your clarity blinds them. They wanted you lost in the fog, but you became the sunrise that exposes everything they tried to hide. That's what keeps them up at night. Now your enemies survived off your uncertainty, like parasites. They loved the moments you questioned yourself. They thrived when you second-guessed your worth. Every time you hesitated, they felt powerful. Every time you doubted, they felt taller. Your confusion fed their confidence, and that's exactly why your clarity terrifies them. Now imagine this. Someone messing with a room's light switch, hoping to keep you in the dark. They liked you stumbling. They liked you unsure. They liked you bending your truth to match their lies. But the problem is, The universe didn't design you to stay dim. The moment your internal light flipped on, every shadow they used to hide behind disappeared. You didn't just see through them, you exposed them. You might even be wondering, why are some people acting strange around me now? Because clarity makes liars uncomfortable. Your growth makes manipulators nervous. Your insight makes pretenders sweat. You became too sharp for their games, too aware for their tactics, too aligned for their illusions. They can't twist your reality anymore. They can't confuse your direction. They can't blur your vision. You now see everything with a razor edge they never prepared for. Your confusion made them bold, but your clarity makes them scatter. The shift wasn't loud, but it was lethal. You stopped asking, "What if I'm wrong?" and started saying, "What if I'm right?" That single internal shift ended their entire strategy. Your certainty shattered the power they held over you. Your awareness stripped them of their influence. When you aligned with your truth, their lies lost oxygen. Imagine a mirror finally wiped clean after years of fingerprints. Suddenly, everything is visible, sharp, undeniable. That's your mind now. That's your vision. And nothing scares an enemy more than someone who finally sees the game clearly from above. You didn't just outgrow confusion. You became the clarity that unmasks every hidden motive, every fake smile, every silent agenda. And now they're standing in the brightness they never expected you to generate. Chosen one, you are the clarity they fear. The illusion is dead. The truth is alive, and you hold all the light now. Number 11. Your victory didn't destroy them, it unmasked them. Winning didn't change them, it just made their real faces impossible to hide. That's the part they never expected. They weren't scared of your rise, they were terrified of what your rise would expose. Your elevation didn't break them, it revealed them. The moment you stepped into your power, their masks slipped. The envy they kept tucked behind fake smiles started dripping through their words. The energy shifted. They couldn't pretend anymore. Not everyone collapsed because you won. They collapsed because your wind stripped away their camouflage. When you were struggling, they played supportive. When you were quiet, they played concerned. When you were uncertain, they played helpful. But the moment you leveled up, their real intentions surfaced with zero effort on your part. Success is the greatest truth serum, and your success hit them harder than any confrontation ever could. Imagine this, a room full of people holding glass masks. As long as the lighting is dim, the masks look solid. But the second a bright light shines, the cracks show, the flaws appear. The truth becomes impossible to unsee. You became that light. The brightness of your evolution exposed every crack they hoped you would never notice. You might even wonder, why did these people switch up on me? Why did their energy shift when I started winning? Because your rise threatened the stories they built about you. They liked you doubtful because it made them feel superior. They liked you small because it kept them comfortable. They liked you stuck because it justified their own stagnation. The moment you rose, their insecurities came crawling out like insects from under a lifted stone. Your elevation didn't hurt them. It confronted them with who they really are. That's why their behavior changed, not because you changed, but because your victory made their intentions visible. Your glow washed the room, revealing jealousy where you once saw support, competition where you once saw friendship, and resentment where you once believed there was love. Imagine a scale tipping slowly until suddenly it clicks. That click was your breakthrough. It forced everyone around you to reveal whether they were clapping out of love or clapping out of obligation. You didn't break them, Chosen One. You exposed them. And now that the truth is out, there's no going back. Number 12. They built a box for you, and you outgrew it in silence. They didn't lose you. You simply became too big to fit inside their limits. That's the truth they choke on now. They tried to define you, contain you, reduce you to something predictable so they could feel safe. They wanted you small enough to control, quiet enough to ignore, and unsure enough to manipulate. But while they were busy building walls around you, you were expanding, evolving, stretching past every boundary they tried to impose. They thought they were trapping you. They didn't realize they were giving you something to push against. Imagine a snake shedding its skin. From the outside, someone might think the snake is breaking, tearing, falling apart. But in reality, it's simply outgrowing the layer that no longer fits. That was you. You weren't collapsing. You were shedding. You weren't escaping their cage. You were evolving beyond its dimensions. And maybe you wondered, why did their spaces feel so tight? Why did I always feel out of place? Because your spirit was expanding faster than the environments they tried to lock you into. You were becoming someone too vast for their small expectations. They wanted you to be predictable so they could stay comfortable. But expansion doesn't care about comfort. Growth doesn't negotiate. Evolution doesn't shrink for anyone. They built a cage. You became the sky. Your transformation wasn't a jailbreak. It was an upgrade. You didn't break the box open. You simply rose until the box became irrelevant. They tried to shrink you with labels. They tried to limit you with doubt. But they tried to define you by your past. And every time they tightened their grip, you grew another inch. Every attempt to confine you only made your eventual expansion louder, like a star forming inside a collapsing shell. At first looking small, dim, insignificant, but the pressure builds, the heat intensifies, and suddenly the shell cracks open, revealing a light that was never meant to be hidden. That's what you became, a force too bright for the spaces they tried to trap you in. You didn't get out. You rose out of reach. You didn't escape their limits. You exceeded them. Chosen One. You were never meant to fit their box. You were meant to make it irrelevant. Number 13. The checkmate wasn't a move. It was your transformation. You didn't outplay them. You outgrew the entire world they were playing in. And that's the truth that hits hardest, because they thought this ending was about strategy, tactics, or clever timing. They thought you planned a final move that cornered them. But the checkmate wasn't something you did. It was something you became. And your transformation itself ended the game. The moment you rose beyond their level, everything they relied on stopped working. Their entire playbook lost meaning in an instant. They believed you were still part of the same board, still bound by the same rules. But what they didn't realize was simple. You had already become something the board was never built to hold. Picture this. Two players locked in a struggle over small squares, obsessing over pieces, arguing over advantage. Then suddenly, one of those pieces stands up, steps away from the board, and transforms into something neither side can control anymore. At that point, the game doesn't end because someone wins. It ends because what they underestimated evolved beyond the system itself. That was you. They didn't lose to your last move. They lost to the version of you that no longer fit inside their expectations. And maybe that's why everything feels different now. Why the shift feels so sudden. Because the moment you aligned with your real identity, the universe stopped seeing you as a player in the game and started responding to you as something far greater. You weren't moving through the system anymore. You became part of the system's foundation. You became the reference point everything else adjusts to. The rhythm, the direction, the unseen pull. And at that stage, nobody can play you anymore, because you are no longer a piece in motion. You are the reason motion happens. What truly disrupted them wasn't your strategy. It was your transformation. Your growth made their tools obsolete. Your awareness dissolved their tricks. Your inner strength rendered their control useless. You didn't outplay them. You outgrew the entire structure they were depending on. And the most powerful part? You were never even trying to defeat anyone. You were simply becoming yourself. The checkmate was just what happened along the way. Think of a caterpillar being pursued, confined by danger at every turn, until it becomes a butterfly. In that moment, the rules no longer apply. The threat disappears, not because it was defeated, but because it can no longer reach the new form. That is what happened to you. You didn't win by fighting inside their system. You transcended it. And the final move was never on the board. It was within you. Your existence in this new form is the checkmate. And now, the game can never return to what it once was.